Good evening, Chops. We have a great show for you this evening. So, this evening, I want to talk about who's going to win, Donald Trump or Joe Biden, and how I think this upcoming election is going to go over. So, there's several things we need to think about. We need to think about the polls that are coming out. We need to think about who the elites want to win, whom the elites are going to vote for, and we also need to think about past elections and our history and recent history. All these things are going to play a role in whom I'm going to say I think is going to win. So, what do these different candidates have going for each other? So, first, I want to talk about the poll numbers regarding Joe Biden and the Joe Biden campaign and how it relates to previous Democrat campaigns. So right now, Donald Trump is beating Joe Biden in almost all the polls. He's beating him in all sorts of polls. And what's especially important is he's beating him so much that even if we account for the fact that there was what Biden has talked about these polls, and he said, well, the polls were slightly more in favor for Trump in the 2020 campaign, and then they weren't. But that was like a 5-point bump for Trump. Even if we take the polls numbers 5 points down from Trump, then if the voting, the election goes how the polls say it will, then Joe Biden will still lose this upcoming election. Now, there's also another thing to consider, which is gerrymandering. In a lot of these Republican districts, they've gerrymandered them. So even if they get a Democratic majority, they'll still go to Trump. So that's another big thing to consider. Now, so what do I think are big things against Biden? So in the past, we've seen a lot of Democratic candidates basically be, I guess, Republican light. So they frame themselves as being basically just Republicans, essentially. For example, Hillary Clinton isn't any different from Nikki Haley. Hillary Clinton and Nikki Haley are exactly the same, basically. I mean, maybe Nikki Haley is a little bit better in the sense that she doesn't do the PC nonsense that Hillary Clinton does, and she's better on border security than Hillary Clinton. But on a lot of issues, Hillary Clinton and Nikki Haley are basically the same. There's no meaningful difference between Nikki Haley and Hillary Clinton. And what we saw in the 2016 election was the Democratic Party was frustrated with Hillary Clinton, and she would try to get Republicans to vote for her. So a lot of the neocon politicians either voted for her or they didn't vote. For example, Dick Cheney was anti-Trump. George Bush Sr. voted for Hillary Clinton. I believe George W. Bush and Jeb Bush were both anti-Trump. So we saw a lot of that. But he ran anyways because what happens is this is only true with elites, conservative elites like George Bush Sr. For normal conservatives, they're just going to vote for the Republican candidate usually because they sort of think to themselves, well, why would why would I vote for the Democrat acting like a Republican when I could vote for the real Republican? So for normal conservatives, this strategy fails. What it actually does is it gets young people and leftists to dislike them or not care about it. So young people don't show up to the polls. And then the only people that show up to the polls are boomers, because boomers consider it part of their duty as American citizens to vote every time they can. Um, and boomers overwhelmingly vote Republican. So it works out in the Republicans' favor. Another good example of this would be the 2014 midterm elections. So there were some pretty like how do I describe this? Some interesting people running as Republicans during the 2014 midterm elections. There was this televangelist that I think he was like an evangelical televangelist. Um, but he was really weird. There was this one like redneck woman that like had an ad campaign about pig castration that won. And there were some legitimately awful people too that won. So there was this doctor that ran on a pro-life campaign, but gave his forced his wife and his mistress to have abortions. And there's this one guy that was insane corruption. He was up on all these charges, and he threatened to throw a journalist off a balcony on camera because of how bad his corruption was. They both won. So there were some legitimately awful people on my side that won. But why did this happen? Because and Mitch McConnell Mitch McConnell won, and everyone hates Mitch McConnell, the Turtle Man. But why did this happen? So the Democratic candidates, well, there's multiple reasons, but one of the reasons is the Democratic candidates all acted, none of them were leftists or progressives or talking about good stuff like pulling our troops out of Afghanistan, putting in a single payer healthcare system, taxing the rich, putting in more government regulation on big companies, federalizing the big companies. No good things. They were just talking about they just pretending to be Republicans, fake Republicans essentially. I mean, some of their campaigns were good. For example, one of them was saying, "Oh, I'm a good Christian and I love God, and you should vote for me." I mean, that's good. He lost, and I don't. If I remember correctly, he wasn't a Christian. He was a Protestant. But I mean, but what I'm getting here is, no, I'm getting off topic. I'm sorry, but what I want to get to is they all ran as being Republicans that are Democrats, essentially. But what happened was that made it so most Democrats didn't want to vote because they thought, well, um, we can vote for the Republican or the Republican, so I'm not voting. And most young people also felt like that, like both sides are being trashed right now. I'm not voting. I mean, this was 2014. Yes, both sides were trash at that time, arguably even more so than now. In some instances, in some ways at least. So the only people that actually voted were boomers, and a lot of boomers feel deep loyalty towards the Republican Party. And again, if you can vote for the real Republican or the fake Republican, Republicans are going to vote for the real Republican. And I think we're seeing this a lot right now in this election. So Joe Biden has folded to the neocons on economic issues. Joe Biden is using our money to pay for a mass genocide in Palestine. Joe Biden is a Zionist extremist. Joe Biden is buddy buddy with Benjamin Netanyahu. Um, Joe Biden is awful in so many ways. I'm mentioning the reasons why Democrats or leftists in particular might not like him, but there's also a bunch of reasons why Republicans won't. Us Republicans and us real conservatives should also hate him. He's pro-abortion. He's pro-feminism. Um, he's pro-immigration. He's pro women's rights. He's pro homosexuality. He's pro transvestitism. He invited a transvestite into the White House. So he's really awful for a million reasons. And a good example of how the sort of Republican light campaign fails, in addition to Hillary Clinton in the 2014 midterms, is so he was running these ads trying to get Nikki Haley voters to vote for him. But Nikki Haley, so he ran all these ads where it was like, Trump is so mean to Nikki Haley. You should vote for Joe Biden. Because at that time, Nikki Haley was a little bit flirting with, maybe Joe Biden is better than Donald Trump. Yeah, so, and he spent millions of dollars on these ad campaigns, and he was doing that. But then Nikki Haley just gave a speech where she said, well, I disagree with Donald Trump on a lot of things, but with that said, I think we should all vote for Donald Trump anyways, because Joe Biden is worse. And I want I'm voting for Donald Trump, and I want my supporters to vote for Donald Trump. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what she said. So what does this mean? So Joe Biden, Joe Biden wasted millions of dollars, TV airtime, and time he could have spent doing much more meaningful campaigns to try to get voters that he just lost to Trump. He's not going to get much of any of them. And those ad campaigns he ran, not only were they a waste of money and didn't get those votes, but they further alienated him from young people, from Gen Z, and from leftists, and from Democrats in general. So that's a good example. And really, so what does this campaign look like? This campaign is, whom are you going to vote for? The capitalist, Zionist, liberal who's going to use our money to pay for a mass genocide in Palestine. Or on the other side, you could vote for the capitalist, Zionist, liberal who's going to use our money to pay for a mass genocide in Palestine. Wow, what great choices. So what's going to happen is most young people aren't going to vote. Most leftists aren't going to vote. Arabs and Muslims aren't going to vote. A lot of people aren't going to vote. The people who are definitely going to vote are boomers, and boomers feel extreme loyalty to the Republican Party. And again, when you can vote for the real Republican or the fake Republican, Republicans are going to vote for the real Republican. So that's how I think Donald Trump might have a chance of winning. The poll numbers are totally on his side. That's a big thing. Now let's talk about if there's a chance that Joe Biden can win the election. So these criminal charges, I believe it was today, but Donald Trump got officially charged with, I can't remember, it was something like 32 felonies, 35 felonies, something like that. That's a big deal. I don't think he's going to serve any prison time for that. But if he does, obviously that would be a really big deal. So, but again, so look, here's what I'm thinking. So this scandal feels like a scandal that people are going to forget about by November. But a lot of Joe Biden scandals aren't what things we're going to forget about by this November. The Palestinian genocide isn't something we're going to forget by November. That's not something the American voters are going to forget by November. Using our money to pay for a mass genocide is a whole lot worse than being convicted of felonies for fraud. Being convicted for felonies for fraud isn't great, and it's bad, but it's better than, morally speaking, a man who gets charged with felonies is a better man than a man who uses the American people's money to pay for a mass genocide. In this case, I don't think that point applies to Donald Trump because Donald Trump has publicly endorsed the Palestinian genocide. So, with regards to this issue, Donald Trump is just as evil as Joe Biden, is not worse. There's a lot of other ways where Joe Biden is a lot better. Donald Trump is a lot better than Joe Biden. For example, Donald Trump is better than Joe Biden on abortion. He's better than him on transvestitism and homosexuality. So there's other, even though Donald Trump is as bad or worse than Joe Biden on Israel and Zionism and the Middle East broadly, Donald Trump is actually better than Joe Biden on a lot of domestic cultural issues. And again, I've said this before, but I'm going to vote for Donald Trump this November. As painful as it will be, he's the lesser of two evils. But the whole felony charges are sort of not the big thing here, because what we need to think about is what we really need to think about is who the elites want to win. Because us normal people, we aren't the ones that will choose who's going to be our next president. The elites will. The politicians don't actually do anything. They're just there to trick you into believing that you have power or you have control of your own lives. The elites, the people who truly rule our country, the people who truly own us, they're the ones that are going to pick our next president. And so what we really need to think about is whom are they going to vote for? Whom are they going to pick? And that's the big question. So in 2016, they picked Donald Trump. Now, Joe Biden has folded to the neocons and economic issues. So they don't have a lot to lose. In the 2025 report, so we know that if Donald Trump gets president, he is going to do, with regards to economics, horrible things. There's a lot of cultural things where he's going to make the country better, or at least try to, but a lot of economic problems are going to be worse under him, for the next 4 years, if he survives 4 years in office. I mean, I don't think either one of them are going to survive 4 more years, but who knows? I didn't think Joe Biden was going to survive his first term in office, so who knows what's going to happen. But the elites will have more economic power under Trump but they'll have quite a bit under Joe Biden. So they don't have to be too picky with choosing which candidate they're for. Though they didn't with the 2016 campaign, as Hillary Clinton was extremely evil on economic issues. But she was definitely a capitalist, a really, really awful capitalist at that. But they picked Trump anyways. So what do I think is the big advantage to Trump? So there's several advantages to him, but I think the biggest one is he's going to push the Overton window right. He's going to move the Overton window to the right wing, much more than Joe Biden presidency would. So that's really important, and that's the main reason I'm voting for him this November. And I think moving to the Overton window to the right, though we might lose, this might get us to win. This might get us to truly defeat the social Marxist globalists and make it so the social Marxist globalists lose and the white people win. That's what could happen if we move the Overton window to the right. So, but the social Marxist globalists are the ones that control America and rule America and are going to pick which presidential candidate will win and which loses. So, what do I see? So, Benjamin Netanyahu has publicly endorsed Donald Trump for the candidate he wants to win. Donald Trump has promised to be even more pro-Israel than Joe Biden, which feels like it should be impossible, but that's what he claims. He's saying that he's going to let Israel take other countries outside of Palestine. He suggested, as disgusting as this is, war with Iran. And truly on Jewish issues or Middle Eastern issues, Trump is really as bad as you could get. He supported the Abraham Accords. He changed the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. He's really awful in those issues. So that's really rough. But the social Marxist globalists might pick him for that reason. Benjamin Netanyahu picked him for that reason. But I think his moving the Overton window to the right could lead to the social Marxist globalist downfall and a victory for white people, finally. So what this really comes down to is whether I'm right, and if I am right, if the social Marxist globalists will be smart enough to see it. What are ways this could go? This could go that I'm wrong, the Trump presidency won't help white people beat the social Marxist globalists. So I'm wrong about that. And in that case, they probably will choose Trump. So what will it mean if Trump wins? Either that scenario that I was wrong, or another scenario. I am right, and the social Marxist globalists just didn't see it. Because the social Marxist globalists, they're evil, but they're intelligent. A lot of them are evil geniuses. But they do stupid things sometimes because a lot of them are overconfident in themselves. They just think, oh, these stupid goyim, we can do whatever we want to them because they're dumb. And a lot of times they push us too far. For example, they go so overboard with a lot of the degeneracy they push on the white races, whether that be teaching that white people are evil in the public school systems, open borders, 5-year-old transvestites, 5-year-old cross-dressers, gender reassignment surgery for children, homosexual marriage, whatever it is. A lot of times they'll push us too far And then we get people like me who I was pushed so far by their degeneracy that I woke up and took the red pill, and now I'm based and red pilled, and I'm against their world order. So, and I'm against Zog. So so what we see is they're smart, but they are so sure in what their book teaches, that Gentiles aren't human, that they will do stupid things sometimes because they think, of course I'm going to win, so I don't have to be careful. Um, and I think I I'm not that's sort of my take for what I've seen in a lot of their behaviors. So what might happen is I am right that the a Trump victory in 2024 could lead to white people finally winning the war against social Marxist globalists. And the social Marxist globalists are going to elect Trump anyways because they're so overconfident that they don't see that, even though they are smart. And they're just blindly thinking, oh, Trump is going to be better for the billionaire class. Trump is going to be better for the donor class than Biden. And Trump is going to be better for Israel than Biden. Um, a good example of this is Benjamin Netanyahu. From what I've heard, I think Benjamin Netanyahu is an evil genius. Obviously, he's evil, but even though we all know he's evil, I do think he is intelligent. But he's supporting Donald Trump. So the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu supports Donald Trump means one of two things: either I'm wrong, or I'm right, and Benjamin Netanyahu is too arrogant to see it, even though he may be intelligent. Is Trump a good president? No. But a lot of young white people, like myself, woke up under his 4 year presidency, and in a lot of cases, as a result of his 4 year presidency or as a result of his presidential campaign. So, as bad as he is, I want him to win anyways, because I think he could help a lot more of us become based and red pilled. I'm crossing my fingers that another Trump presidency will awaken a lot of young white people, a lot of white teenage boys, a lot of young white men, to the truth, to take the red pill and look up at who truly owns them, which group really owns us, and fight for our race. Thank you for tuning in to this stream. I think I'm going to wrap it up pretty soon. Um, but I if would love more ideas. So if there's anything you want me to talk about, then please leave a comment down in the comment section below, because I want to do this show and I want to talk about what you want me to talk about. Thank you. Good evening.